Thank you to the sponsor for this video, Keen. Visit trykeen.com/Nadiya to get your first 10 minutes for only $1.99 with one of their trusted advisors. I too had a chance to try Keen when I was approached to have them as a sponsor. I loved my reading, and I only recommend services I trust. Visit trykeen.com/Nadiya to get your first 10 minutes for only $1.99. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of March 20th, 2022. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. It is a remarkable astrological week, without a doubt. Big moves happening in the sky now. And I do think that this week, in many ways, is setting the stage, on the one hand, for breakthroughs. Now, those breakthroughs are going to come either during or just after a period of frustration. But what we also have is a highlight moment as part of several key moments in the larger Jupiter in the sign of Pisces cycle or transit that we are going through right now. So there is a lot to talk about here. Now, right out of the gate, as we begin the week, we do so with the sun moving into the sign of Aries. So this is known as, of course, the first day of spring. This is also the beginning of the astrological new year. So happy astrological day for everybody out there, and astrological new year as well. And this is also when Aries month begins. So happy birthday to all the Aries out there as well. And so this tends to bring with it a time of energy that invites renewal, invites new beginnings, invites fresh perspectives. And all of us will be feeling that energy. And I'll tell you, there are going to be fresh perspectives that seem to come up and take us very much by surprise. Now, whether this is inner uncertainty and frustration that lends itself to new beginnings that we feel, or whether it is external events that inspire this newfound sense of owning our power, well, ultimately, all of us in one way or another are going to face some frustration before we have a breakthrough moment. And I do think that breakthroughs are worth the effort that they sometimes entail, as the effort sometimes is self-reflection and moving through some difficult emotion. That's very likely the feeling as we begin the week. It is going to be on Tuesday that Mars will square Uranus. And so these two planets are going to square, which means a conversation of tension. And this is energy we should be feeling as we begin the week, and will only intensify until we get to Tuesday, after which we will notice this energy rapidly dissipate. This particular celestial conversation happens about once a year. And when it takes place, it is always noteworthy for the surprises that come forward, whether it's surprises about ourselves or some external circumstance. And as these surprises find a way to come to the surface, we are invited to take into consideration our own depth of understanding and our own depth of feeling. It is Mars right now moving through the sign of Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is an energy with a very interesting dichotomy to it. It is at once an energy that has to do with the collective. So it is about understanding where it is that we are in relation to others and taking other perspectives into consideration. But it's also an energy that is highly individualistic. It is fixed air, meaning that it happens in between a season, in this case winter, and it is a highly intellectual energy. Intellectual pursuits are often solitary. They do involve having to pay attention to yourself and pay attention to your own thoughts and mind as you flesh out particular ideas. And in this process of independence, we come to know ourselves more fully. In this process of observing our own ideas and developing them, we come to tap into our own intellectual power, which is inherently an individual pursuit. And so having a sign that at once represents the individual in a highly rebellious state, and on the other side, having a sign that represents our connection to each other. Well, that is where Mars is right now. Mars as a principle is quite singular. It is an energy that speaks to an understanding of self, self-knowledge contained, and then the arrow arising from the circle of Mars represents acting from that place of self-knowledge. And so that in and of itself, self-knowledge is an individual pursuit, and yet acting from a place of understanding that our actions have implications on other people. How is it that we can take action while being true to ourselves, honoring ourselves, but also understanding that those actions will always have ripple effects as part of the collective and will influence the collective, even if we take those actions very individually at that. And so here we have a phenomenal energy of Mars speaking in a conversation of tension with Uranus, bringing about one of the more surprising days of the year. Not quite the most surprising, that's the meeting of Mars and Uranus that is going to happen a little bit later on as we navigate into the summer. And yet, for now, this is a pretty good precursor. It is holding the power of the individual and having an awareness in an instant as to how it is that our actions affect others. At the same time, though, this is action of rebellion and of freedom. The energy of Aquarius is an energy of freedom as well. And if you think about our mind, many a philosopher has spoken about how our mind is the only place that we are truly free. And there have been many great thinkers through the ages who went through periods of isolation, of limitation, whether it was that they were imprisoned or whether it was that they had physical limitations like illness, who have spoken of how it is that our bodies may be limited, our physical movement may be limited, but it is within our minds that we truly know freedom. And so we have this energy here, the planet of freedom, the ruling planet of the sign of Aquarius, Uranus, speaking in tension with Mars, activating that Mars. And this is a call to rebellion if there ever was one. Now, the key really is to be a rebel with a cause instead of a rebel without a clue. Now, what's the difference? Well, there's one that is the performance of rebellion because we don't truly feel free, because we don't truly feel that we are able to honor our inner heart or our inner impulse, the inner voice of authenticity and individuality. We can get caught in performances of freedom instead. However, the real gift here is that even if it's hard, we're willing to challenge what it is that has been familiar to us. Even if it's difficult, we're willing to look at old narratives, whether they're part of our own conditioning or whether it is that they're part of societal messages that we get, and we're able to instead blaze our own trail. We're able to instead assert ourselves and whom it is we know ourselves to be, if only for our own peace. Some types of statements are more dramatic than others, but the willingness to live true to oneself, to be one's most authentic self, well, that is an act of supreme rebellion, an act of blazing one's own individual trail and being willing to uncover what that path may be, even if you don't know what it's going to look like next, even if you only see the step that you're in and not necessarily the following step. Trusting that impulse, that desire to be oneself is a powerful thing. And so all of us in at least one way or another might find ourselves impulsive. We may notice that in other people as well. That is going to be the energy of the moment, especially as we start this week and get towards Tuesday. But the opportunity here is of breakthrough and is of new understanding, to conceptualize ourselves differently than ever before. Now, another thing I wanted to mention, the energy of Aquarius, so highlighted by this square of Mars and Uranus. The energy of Aquarius has a very strong duality to it. So one of the dualities, of course, I already spoke of, the collective and the individual. Another duality is hyper-intellectualism and intuition, the role that intuition plays. Now, another part of the duality, if you think about it, it's two, right? Duo has to do with two. And so very often when we look at the energy of Aquarius, we may notice that when that energy is highlighted, it isn't just one event that happens, but there's two different things that happen, or whatever happens, we're able to connect it to something that happened before, or it mirrors something that might have taken place in our lives before as well. I was watching this wonderful new show that is on Apple TV called The After Party. Now, one of the reasons I watch this show is because Tiffany Haddish is in it, and anything that Tiffany Haddish is in, I am going to watch. If you've watched me for a while, you might remember way back in 2019, it was at the beginning of 2019, I had a chance to meet her. I'll put up the picture here somewhere. And I remember when I met her and I walked up to her and I said, I love you. It's my birthday. What time were you born? Like, this is literally as I'm approaching her for a hug. And that pretty much let her know that I was an astrologer. We just spoke for a couple of minutes and she was absolutely lovely, an incredible person to have that moment with. And so, of course, now, anytime I have a class, anytime it's possible, I try to use her chart in that class, if only to share this picture that I'm going to share with you right now somewhere on the screen. And so, yes, Tiffany Haddish is in this show, and it's very fun and very creative. It's called The After Party. And in one of the episodes, there's this song, and I will link to it below. And the song is called Two Shots. And it's interesting because the song talks about how we think that opportunity only knocks once, but actually you always get two opportunities. And it isn't always what you think. You may be going for a particular opportunity, but then you may actually get an opportunity at something that is in alignment with what it is that you were going for, that you thought you were meant to do. But maybe it's better suited to you in some way. And so this song is supposed to be funny. It's a comedy and it is very entertaining, but it is quite spiritual. It talks about the universe and it talks about how we all get two shots. Now, I happen to believe that the universe is abundant, that there are unlimited opportunities available to us. And when it is that we're listening to the universe, the opportunities that come truly can align us with a higher, more loving vision for our lives. And I truly do believe that sometimes what it is that we think is such a big ask of the universe, is such a massive opportunity that it just seems so big and we would be so fortunate if we got it, is actually very small in comparison to what the universe or higher power has planned for us. That sometimes there is a vision for our lives that is much greater than anything we could imagine for ourselves if we would put our ego aside and instead be open to it and see what life has to show us, see what life is trying to tell us. And I'll talk more about that in just an instant. But yes, this idea of two shots, wow. Talk about Aquarian energy. When I heard that, I felt like this was so speaking to this upcoming square of Mars and Uranus. There's always more than one opportunity. With the energy of Aquarius, there are at least two opportunities. And it's possible that it isn't exactly what we think it's going to be, doesn't look like we think, but in many ways, what we were going for that didn't work out prepared us for what now opportunity may be showing up for us. And so we may have to act very quickly. Big opportunities are possible under this. When you see a square, as I've mentioned before, my friend April Elliott Kent, who I had at my school, Synchronicity University, who I've interviewed on this channel, she's talked about how squares mean something is happening. It means that there's activity taking place. I like to think of squares as motivation, and they are inspiring action. And as a result of taking action, we're able to make incredible things transpire. There is always a fine line, right? All of us are granted the opportunities that we are. And that's going to be relative depending on all kinds of factors. And yet, when we get those opportunities, it isn't just about what they might lead to. It's about whom we become in the process. It's about what we might learn about ourselves in the process that prepares us for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, as part of what it is that we may be meant to do, and as part of what it is that ultimately could lead us on a pathway to peace if we would just listen. And so All of us, in one way or another, are motivated to take action. For some of us, that action is going to come up very impulsively, very instinctively. But ultimately, that action can lead us in a direction of finding a newfound sense of authenticity. And that is the great gift of this time. So just a little side note before I continue, very interesting. I don't know if you picked it up, if the mic picked it up, but there were some horns going off. That is a train. I am now in the middle of the mountains of the Andes in Peru, and this is very exciting. But yes, it is a rainy night. There are trains going by and all kinds of things going by in this town called Cusco. And so you might hear some of that in the background, and I hope that that's okay. So let me talk about another one of the energies that I touched on, this idea of grace and humility, how that can end up leading us somewhere that is also quite profound and quite beautiful as well. There are times in life that ask us to own our power and as a result make great things happen. But there is also a energy that contrasts that is a part of the law of the universe. And that is to allow, to release, to accept, and to receive. These are different. There is an active principle and there is a receptive principle. And both are part of living a balanced life, a spiritually rewarding life. And both are part of what ultimately allow us to fulfill what our lives could be in a higher, more loving sense. Sometimes I like to talk about Ibn Arabi. I would like to talk about him every single time I make a video, actually. He is deeply meaningful to me. So Ibn Arabi was a Sufi mystic and astrologer. He lived about 1,000 years ago. And he believed that the chart is perfect. The chart is exactly what it is that you need it to be so that you can do all the things that you were created to do by a loving hand as part of your full embodiment, your full expression of divine energy. That your existence is a new way that the divine gets to experience itself in a way that it would not have had you not existed. And the chart can point the way to the fulfillment of all these new ways that the divine has a desire to know itself. As part of the chart and as part of transits to the chart, there are going to be times where we awaken to an understanding of our own power. But to think that that's all we are, well, that's a really good way to create anxiety in our lives. And I think that when we focus way too much on what we are manifesting and that we are responsible for manifesting what we do, while there certainly are times, and that's one way in which we exercise our power as human beings, there is another power that is incredibly profound. There is another power that can help us tremendously, and that is the power of humility. That is the power of knowing that we don't know everything, including we don't necessarily know what that fullness of what a higher, more loving vision for our life could be. And Ibn Arabi believed that the chart, in moments of grace, provides us with a glimpse. That's it. We get a glimpse. If we do our own work, if we're willing to be conscious, if we're willing to cultivate a relationship with our own divine energy within, then there will be times in the moment of looking at a chart where we will be granted a glimpse into the mystery that might reveal what that higher, more loving vision for our life could be. But there's another way that we can be granted a glimpse, and that is through practicing humility and acceptance and allowing that information to reveal itself to us rather than telling the universe exactly what it is that we are to be, knowing that sometimes there is something greater that is planned for us. That is a powerful place of peace to be in. That is part of the reason that humility is considered one of the great spiritual lessons, one of the great virtues. It's getting the ego self. The ego self is created through our conditioning. The ego self believes that it needs to prove itself, it needs to be better, that it is the only one responsible for what is to transpire. And that is part of why the ego self is called the false self, especially in Buddhist philosophy. And so I'm bringing all this up now because we have very powerful Piscean energy playing out. And Piscean energy is about the allowing. It is about the surrender. It is about being carried on the waves. You know, sometimes when we see a hard transit, right? For example, Pluto. Earlier today, with the International Academy of Astrology, I taught a class on Pluto. Thank you to everybody who showed up live, and a lot of people who signed up for that as well, who got the download. Thank you to each and every one of you. But with that class, I was talking about how with a difficult Pluto transit, like a square, like a conjunction, people make it infinitely more difficult on themselves when they try to tell the universe, or they try to hold on, or they say, no, this will not leave. I refuse to allow this person, place, thing, or situation to leave my life. And they hold on so tightly, and they create so much pain for themselves. But the lesson of Pluto is that some things are fated, that some things you've got to surrender to. And I think that's part of the outer planets, right? That's part of the lessons of Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. They're very karmic energies. They ask for us to get out of the way, to allow a higher, more loving vision to be revealed. And so does Piscean energy as well. Piscean energy moves beyond the energy of Aquarius. Aquarius is the energy of the collective. Piscean energy is the energy of communion. Whereas Aquarian energy says, I am an individual as part of many individuals. Piscean energy says, the individual does not exist. We are all one. And so what's happening now? Well, it is going to be on Monday that Mercury will conjunct Jupiter. And then on Wednesday, Mercury will conjunct Neptune, thereby creating a bridge between these energies that are tightening and tightening as we move forward. April is set to be a massive month where it comes to the transit of Jupiter in Pisces. And right now, Mercury is beginning to point the way, is showing us how these energies are coming together for us. And it is going to be at the very end of the week that Mercury will sextile, speak in harmony with Pluto. And so it's these conjunctions that are very interesting to me. They speak to being willing to see the world with eyes of grace, with eyes of humility, with eyes of love, universal love. Being willing to see where it is that we are part of a larger tapestry, and that sometimes we can't even see the brilliant and beautiful part we play in that larger tapestry. But it's there. It's part of one whole. And I do think that Piscean energy as well invites us to consider that higher, more loving vision for our life. It invites us to consider the limits of our knowledge, the limits of our will, the limits of what we might know, and to find peace within that. And so we are going to have Mercury conjunct Jupiter on a very surface level, right? That represents good news. In at least one area of life, that represents good news finding us. But then Mercury immediately moves on to connect with Neptune in the sky, to meet Neptune. And Neptune is an interesting energy. It stands as a bit of a contrast. It is conceptualized as the higher frequency of Venus. And so whereas Venus is romantic love, it is Neptune that represents divine love. The thing with Neptune, though, is that it is an energy of extremes, like the outer planets can be. On the one hand, it is miracles and magic. Conjunct Mercury, we're seeing it, we're talking about it. But because this is an energy of extremes, it can go the other way as well. And this can represent an energy of disappointment or deflation, uncertainty. A part of faith is embracing uncertainty. Faith doesn't mean a whole lot if you already know. Faith in ourselves, faith in our future doesn't mean that we have to know all the details of how everything is going to line up, just that we know it will. And sometimes it's small moments and the ways in which we're able to connect the dots that fortify our faith. And faith is more valuable when we surrender to the not knowing. And that is part of what Mercury conjunct Neptune is going to invite us to do. To understand that whatever happens, however we might instinctively judge it on the surface, it's part of a larger wisdom. And if we're willing to see with eyes of humility, then we can that much more quickly get to the place of Mercury sextile Pluto. Now, it's interesting because the sextile is considered a harmonious alignment conversation. It is one of empowerment. So it's not one where good stuff just shows up. That's the trine. It's one where we are invited to consider what we could do, and we're motivated to do it. And as a result, we reap reward. And in this case, with the Mercury sextile Pluto, we are invited to think differently. We're invited to focus on what it is that matters. We are invited to hone our own mind and energy and know that the work will count for something. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but we're all moving forward in that more empowered direction. And it is this particular sextile that I think is going to invite us to very quickly see the advantages of whatever it is that transpires midweek. Whatever looks so hopeful, so promising at the beginning of the week is what's going to carry us towards the middle of the week. And then whatever happens, elation or deflation, we get to the end of the week and we see how it worked out for the best. We see how, by not being overly attached to any given outcome, actually now there's greater opportunity because of our healthy non-attachment. That is part of also what the Piscean energy is meant to teach us. All of us right now as a collective are intimately involved in an accelerated course of surrender and allowing and acceptance, on an accelerated course, thanks to Jupiter in Pisces, of being able to recognize the magic, the grace playing out in our lives, to acknowledge the miracles in our life, and to acknowledge the intimate ways in which we are connected to everyone and everything, and the profound healing that awareness can bring out. And so I am going through a bit of a transition in my life. The details aren't as important. But I will say that I have truly noticed these last few days, as I've been in transit, as I've been here in Peru, that it's the small moments, right? It's the little moments, the few seconds, that minute that someone has spent speaking to me, talking to me, just exchanging a little bit of care, how profoundly healing that is. How much that can carry through a person from one moment to the next. And I've really come to appreciate that we don't know the journey of others. We just don't. But we do know that small moments exchanged can be profoundly meaningful and profoundly healing, can be infinitely helpful and infinitely loving, even if they seem pleasant or we judge them as superficial on the surface. A moment of interest in another person is validating that person, is seeing that person. And that's all we truly want. All of us just want to be seen. I shared with you recently a wonderful show that I saw of a performance called In and of Itself. And I would invite you to watch that. If you haven't already, do watch that. That lesson really came home in that particular program, that particular presentation. We all just want to be seen. And to be seen, it literally takes a second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds. And that alone can carry someone forward for a very long time, can be just the presence they need. That is the power of Piscean energy. To know that when we are seen, it is as if the whole of divinity is acknowledged in that moment. And when we give that gift to others, we simultaneously receive it ourselves. That is the gift of knowing that we are one. We are part of everyone and everything. What I love about this week for us, well, look, it is a profound and meaningful time, I will say. I think there is an accelerated course that we are on where it comes to understanding compassion and humility and grace in a whole new way. There are certainly cultural examples where we are not seeing that as much because we are now in the later degrees, the anaretic degrees of Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. And so we're going to see examples that go the other way, that aren't necessarily acknowledging or presenting the perfect image of grace and humility. And yet these are states of spirit that are also a saving grace, and they will save all of us. They provide a healing balm to all of us, whether you are the giver or the receiver. There's powerful energy of this time of miracles, of being able to see those miracles play out. And let me tell you, you, my dear, are a miracle in and of yourself. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys. And to prove it to you, here are some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up, who hits the notification bell. All of you, thank you so much. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. At NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, you get expanded exclusive video scopes for each and every sign, each and every week for as low as just $3 a month. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space. I look forward to meeting you there. Synchronicity University presents the one and only Michael Lutin, astrology legend. Michael Lutin is coming to Synchronicity University for as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate for only about another week to go for Choose Your Tuition Rate, Synchronicity University's very famous Choose Your Tuition Rate. Now, I have been saying to my students, if there's one class you're going to take this year, make it this class. Michael Lutin is a celebrated, award-winning, world-renowned astrologer. He truly is one of our living legends. And he is now coming to Synchronicity University. And he's going to help you to understand how he approaches a chart and how he reads a chart and teach you some very practical techniques as well. Now, I did recently interview Michael Lutin, and I have posted that on my YouTube channel, and I will link to it below as well. And in that interview, on the one hand, he does talk about the different things we're going to cover in the class, but then he also gives you these really practical techniques. Like, it's one of so many he has that you can immediately apply to understand your chart. And as he says in that interview, not everybody who studies astrology is going to be a professional astrologer, but there certainly is value in people learning a methodology and practical techniques to help them to understand their own chart more deeply and understand the charts of others. The interview I felt was so profound and meaningful, but also really useful for the practical techniques he shared as well. So I'm so glad so many of you loved that interview. That meant a lot to me. And I hope that you will check out his class as well. And so again, Michael Lutin, living astrology legend, the one, the only, is coming to Synchronicity University. And you've got just a little over a week left as we start this week to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class for the one and only Michael Lutin. Link is in the description below. Synchronicity University presents classes with me as part of the upcoming spring session at Synchronicity University. Now, you can choose your tuition rate until the middle of April. So there's about 3 weeks left to choose your tuition rate for classes with me. I will be teaching Black Moon Lilith in Synastry. I will also be teaching on the Sun, on Vesta, the asteroid. I'll be teaching on the 12th house as well. Parent-child synastry, the astrology of style and fashion, and so much more. So we are going to have a lot of fun this spring. If you can join us live Saturdays, that's amazing. If you can't join us live, you will get the download. You would be very welcome to sign up as low as just $5 a class. Would choose your tuition rate on right now for a limited time. Classes with me this spring at Synchronicity University. Link is in the description below. Synchronicity University presents the one, the only Melissa Sanova, back by popular demand. Melissa Sanova, best-selling author, will be teaching based on her book, Kitchen Table Magic. She's going to be teaching a magic class. This is based on your request. When she taught a class, people loved it so much. They loved the energy that she brought and really loved her teaching style. And previously she taught a class on tarot. Now she's teaching a class on magic. And so this is going to give you a really firm foundation in understanding magical practices, spells, all that good stuff based on her best-selling book, Kitchen Table Magic. So I hope that you will check that out as low as just $5 a class with Synchronicity University's world famous Choose Your Tuition rate. Well, it's on right now until the end of April. So check out Melissa Sanova coming up this spring. Classes in May at Synchronicity University. Links are in the description below. And a shout out to my sponsor for this week's episode. It is Keen. Try keen.com/Nadiya to get your first 10 minutes for just $1.99. And so I hope you'll check them out. Link is in the description below. And thank you to Keen for sponsoring this video. And thank you everybody out there for watching. I haven't talked to you about my books in a while. I've got a whole bunch of books available for sale on Amazon, so you may want to check that out. One of my books is, well, the first book is Astrology Realized. That book gives you a foundational understanding of not only the history and philosophical development of astrology, but it also helps you to understand how to read charts. So it gets you started in that. I wrote a book called The Body and the Cosmos, which explores the different parts of the body and their connection to the sky as inspired by Plato's Timaeus, and it includes meditations. Another book of mine is called Prayers to the Sky, and that book is basically like astrological magic light. It gives you some insights into how to connect emotionally and spiritually with the planets as parts of yourself. My next book after that was The Universe is Wise and Loving, and this is on the nodes of the moon in astrology, my spiritual understanding of this very powerful chart point in the chart. And finally, a book I co-wrote with my friend Nadiya Robles, who is a world-renowned expert in Mayan astrology. Well, together we created Mayan astrology, also available in Spanish as well, Astrología Maya, understanding your sun sign and compatibility through the lens of Mayan astrology. And for that matter, my first book, Astrology Realized, is also available in Spanish as well. So there you go. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for all your love, your support, your enthusiasm, and all the wonderful energy that you bring. I'm truly so grateful for it. And thank you for having me as some part of your sacred journey. I'm always humbled and grateful for that as well. Thank you again for watching. And if you want to keep up with my Peru adventures and what's going on, make sure you follow me on social media. Links are below. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of that with you guys as we go along. Thank you again. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. Welcome to the exciting rebirth of Superstar, featuring choose your membership rate as low as just $3 a month. At Superstar, you get expanded, exclusive videoscopes each and every week, unlimited access to special horoscopes, class passes for Synchronicity University, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space. I look forward to meeting you there.